Unless you live in a hospital operating room, you live with pests. Now, some can be a real health threat and some are just a nuisance. How we deal with pests can be more dangerous than the pests themselves. Hold it, I'll take that. This is not something that you play around with. There are some safe and practical things that you can do about pests, even public enemy number one. Let me show you some of the critters you're likely to find and where you're likely to find them. Pests need food to eat and they need water in order to survive. The kitchen is the great place to start. Here we have crumbs on the countertop and standing water in the sink. Now here is where we can find ants in the spring and summer. Ants are not a health hazard, but they are a nuisance. That's why we put them as number 6 on our most wanted list. Have you ever opened your cupboard and taken out your flour, and when you open your flour, out flies meal moths? They start life as eggs, and sometimes they're already in the package. They hatch into mealworms. Just like the ant, they're not a health problem, but they do spoil the flour. The kitchen is another area where you can also find fruit flies and house flies. Now, house flies are not only a nuisance, but they can also carry serious diseases. There goes my walking flea collector. He collects them. The eggs fall off and hatch into my furniture, carpet, his bedding, even my bed when he wants to jump in. Because these little vampires feed on blood, they have the potential of transmitting some serious diseases, some I can't even pronounce. That puts them at number 3 on the most wanted list. Now here is a place you may not want to go into without having an armed guard. These openings are big enough for public enemy number 1 and 2, roaches and rodents. Of all the common pests, roaches, mice, and rats, these rascals are the most worrisome when it comes to health problems.
Ants and meal moths are really just a nuisance. The more serious things like flies and fleas and so forth, flies feed on garbage. Take care of the garbage, the larvae have no place to feed, you won't have a problem. Fleas are a little more serious problem, and your vet could recommend something that you can treat the pet with to control the situation. In addition to that, you need to be doing things around your home to get the larvae and the eggs, vacuuming in areas where your pets like to frequent, where they sleep, vacuuming your furniture, your rugs, in closets and so forth can help take care of the situation. Cockroaches like to hide behind baseboards, in your walls, under appliances, underneath the sink, mainly because they don't like light. And so you may have them and not even know that unless you come out in the middle of the night and turn on a light. Rats and mice are our most serious problem when it comes to pests, and you'd be surprised at how small an opening they need to get into your home. Mice need a hole as small as a dime. Rats need a little bigger, size of a quarter.
The most common thing we see related to household pests are bites, in particular bites from rats, mice, and bites from fleas. They will come in, usually the parent complaining the child has a rash, and they're not really sure why the child has a rash. But once we go through the history and the physical exam, we can sort of figure out together that there's a problem with pests in the house, and it can be any one of the ones I mentioned before. And then we have to treat the rash, but really the big thing that needs to be done is you have to remove the pests from the house. Another sensitive issue is roaches and roaches in the home. And these can be definite triggers for children that have asthma as well as children that have eczema, sensitive skin conditions. There are several different reasons why roaches cause problems in the home. Number one, it's their actual makeup. It's the outer shell of the roaches that leave little pieces of that around, and that makes the asthma worse. The other are the droppings, the feces of the roaches, as well as rodents, rats and mice can also, their feces can be triggers for asthma and eczema. I say it's a sensitive issue because nobody really wants to admit that they have a roach problem or roach infestation in the home, but it's very important to make sure we gather that history, because if it's a silent problem, then the child will keep coming back in with asthma problems. The eczema will never get better until that pest, again, is removed from the house, until that problem is extinguished.
It is important to find out what type of pest you're dealing with. And the best way to find out is to put down some sticky traps. You can find these in your local hardware store, even your supermarket. Some good places are under your sink, behind your refrigerator, or behind your stove. Once we know what critters we're dealing with, then we'll know how to control them. We could have mice for weeks without ever seeing them, but they leave their little calling cards. If the droppings are bigger, the problem is bigger. Rats. One of the first things you do about pests, you don't invite them in. Now these holes up here, they're big enough for mice or rats to get in. We have to close these up.
With a hole this size, we would like to use a type of cement mortar compound, probably putting some loose stones in, and then use the cement as a packing compound to make sure it stays there and it seals up the area and prevents pest entry point. Over here we have two holes, one here, one there. These holes should be stuffed with a stainless steel or a copper type of steel wool. We put these in with a probing tool of sort, screwdriver, stuff them in, and you make sure it's nice and tight. The reason we use these two type products are because they do not rust. If we use steel wool that you use to clean pots with, that would rust out. Some of the things you can use to patch holes are dash patch, a concrete mix, or a dry lock, which dries very, very fast and hard. You have to work quickly with that. Also, we have a stainless steel and a copper mesh for the smaller holes. And we go to the silicone caulk, which is used primarily for the outside.
This is another invitation, a supply of water. You should keep your basement as dry as possible. Don't leave food scraps or crumbs around. It attracts roaches. Jamal, remember our rule.
Let's just say someone's kitchen was under...
Of course, I got to set a good example.